Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you to today's release. And as usual, we are privileged to have in our midst our government statistician, Professor Samuel Kobna-Enim, who will do us the honor by presenting to us the consumer price indices and inflationary rate for the month of June 2024. So without much ado, please join me in welcome Professor Nim, who will do us the honors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. John Foster Ajao, Head Price Statistics, Ghana Statistical Service. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Today, the 10th of July, 2024, Ghana Statistical Service releases June 2024 Consumer Price Index and the associated rate of inflation. To place the headline figures and the disaggregated figures in context, we're going to provide the definition and measurement of Consumer Price Index and rate of inflation. We then release the headline figures for Consumer Price Index and rate of inflation for the month of June 2024. We start the disaggregation from the 13 dominant divisions, where we provide rate of inflation across the 13 dominant divisions. Further disaggregation is done based on food inflation, where we look at the various subclasses that contribute to food inflation, as it is the share that has the dominant weight for the computation of Consumer Price Index and rate of inflation. We'll proceed to do disaggregations at the regional level and identify the inflation for imported items and also for locally produced items. We're going to conclude today's release with highlights of Consumer Price Index and rate of inflation for the month of June 2024. To sustain discussions on the June release, we're going to provide some item level changes in prices that is expected to engender national, regional, and household level discussions on the use of Consumer Price Index and rate of inflation. We do emphasize that Consumer Price Index is a measure of a fixed basket of goods and services, and this fixed basket of goods and services are assumed to be purchased by households on a monthly basis. So once items in the basket change, it is expected that the overall price of the basket would also change. The rate of inflation is a measure of the relative changes in the Consumer Price Index, and this is done over a time period, either on a year-on-year basis or on a month-on-month basis. Today's release, we're going to compare June 2023 to June 2024, and also compare May 2024 to June 2024. We do granulation at various levels, as was indicated earlier, at the regional level, commodity type and source, to help us identify the root causes of changes in rate of inflation over time. Consumer Price Index is not a price measure, as was indicated earlier. Another name for Consumer Price Index is a fixed basket index. This means that we have assumed as a country a set of items that are consumed by households in Ghana. We have provided detailed information on Consumer Price Index and rate of inflation in our Consumer Price Index Manual, Concepts and Methods. The computation of Consumer Price Index and rate of inflation uses three key variables. These are prices, quantities, and expenditure of weight of the items. Prices and quantities are obtained from the markets on monthly basis, and the expenditure on weight, which signals the importance that persons in Ghana put on these items that we have in the basket, are obtained from our regular Living Standard Survey. In this case, the last Living Standard Survey that was conducted in 2017-2018. In 2021, Ghana Statistical Service readjusted the weight for regions that have been subdivided, and all that we did was, for regions that have been subdivided, we reshared these weights across the divided regions. So in the case of the Den-Bronga-Ahafo region, we subdivided the weight across Bono, Bono East, and Ahafo regions. Analysis of price changes of the individual items are further provided to engage wider discussion. We collect data from 57 markets across the 16 administrative regions. In these 57 markets, we have identified 8,337 outlets, and from these 8,337 outlets, prices are collected from approximately 47,800 products. These 47,800 products are the different brands that we have for the 307 items that we have in the basket for the computation of consumer price index. Of the 307 items, we have ordered them in a hierarchy of 13 divisions, 44 groups, 98 classes, and 156 subclasses. The essence of this ordering in a hierarchy is to allow for us to compute inflation at different levels. Henceforth, an item which is part of a subclass cannot be identified with another subclass. Consumer Price Index and rate of inflation for the month of June 2024. Consumer Price Index for the month of June 2024 was 226.4 relative to 184.4 that was recorded for the same time in June 2023. Consumer Price Index for June 2024 stood at 226.4 relative to 184.4. Based on these two indices, that is CPI for June 2023 and CPI for June 2024, rate of inflation for the month of June 2024 was 22.8%. Rate of inflation for the month of June 2024 was 22.8%. This indicates that between June 2023 and June 2024, general price levels of goods and services went up by 22.8%. Between June 2023 and June 2024, general price levels of goods and services went up by 22.8%. This signals a slowdown in a year-on-year inflation, as in May 2024 we recorded 23.1%, hence we've seen a slowdown of 0.3 percentage points from 23.1% to 22.8% for the month of June 2024. On a month-on-month basis, with a price index of 226.4 relative to 220.0, month-on-month inflation for the month of June 2024 was 2.9%. Between May 2024 and June 2024, prices of goods and services went up by 2.9%. This also signals a 0.3 percentage slowdown in a month-on-month inflation, as we recorded 3.2 monthly inflation in the month of May 2024, slowing down by 0.3 percentage points to 2.9% for the month of June 2024. We look at trends on a year-on-year basis and on a month-on-month basis. On a year-on-year basis, the consecutive 3-month decline in year-on-year inflation has been marginally reversed, as we recorded an inflation rate of 25.8% in the month of March 2024, declining to 23.1% in May 2024. This 2-month consecutive decrease in year-on-year inflation has been marginally reversed with a decline of 22.8% for the month of June 2024. On a month-on-month basis, overall rate of inflation, which stood at 2.9% for the month of June 2024, is the second highest that has been recorded in the last 7 months, as we did record a contraction in 0.7%. It peaked to 3.1% in the month of May 2024, and we've seen a slowdown of 0.3 percentage points in June 2024 to 2.9% for June 2024. We do disaggregation based on food and non-food inflation, and also inflation on locally produced items and imported items. Food inflation for the month of June 2024 stood at 24.0% relative to 21.6%, indicating a 2.4 percentage point difference between food inflation and non-food inflation. This is in contrast to what we experienced last month, that is in the month of May 2024, as in May 2024, non-food inflation was higher than food inflation by 1.0 percentage points. From a food inflation perspective, we are seeing an increase of 1.4 percentage points, as last month, that is May 2024, food inflation stood at 22.6%, increasing by 1.4 percentage points to 24.0% for the month of June 2024. We see the reverse in the case of non-food inflation, as non-food inflation decreased by 2.0 percentage points, decreasing from 23.6% in the month of May 2024 to 21.6% in the month of June 2024. On a month-on-month basis, food inflation stood at 5.1% for the month of June 2024, relative to 0.9% for non-food inflation in the month of June 2024. The difference is about 5 times as high as what we recorded for food inflation, as non-food inflation was 0.9% and food inflation 5.1%. From a locally produced item perspective and an imported item perspective, this month has recorded a relatively higher variation between inflation for locally produced items and inflation for imported items, as the percentage point difference stood at 7.5% for the month of June, 7.5 percentage points for the month of June 2024, with locally produced items recording 25.0% and inflation for imported items 17.5%. From a trend perspective, focusing on food and non-food inflation, food inflation for 2 consecutive months for March 2024 has declined, and this decline in food inflation has been reversed from 22.6% to 24.0%. In the case of non-food inflation, we saw an increase in the last 3 months in contrast to the decrease that we saw for food inflation. Non-food inflation marginally increased from March 2024 to May 2024, and this marginal increases in food inflation also has been reversed, and we see a downward trend for non-food inflation for the month of June 2024. On a month-on-month basis, we continue to observe stark volatilities with non-food inflation relative to food inflation. Food inflation has recorded the highest rate of food inflation, which is 5.1% in the last 13 months, with the steepest increase happening between May and June 2024, increasing from 2.7% to 5.1%. On the other hand, we see a reversal of the non-food inflation, which consistently increased between March 2024 to May 2024, and a significant drop from 3.6% to 0.9% for the month of June 2024. So on a month-on-month basis, we see food and non-food inflation moving in opposite directions. Focusing on inflation for locally produced items and inflation for imported items, in the month of June 2023, we realized that inflation for imported items was significantly higher than inflation for locally produced items, with a difference of 8.8 percentage points. In November 2023, this dominance switched, while we saw that locally produced items recorded a higher rate of inflation relative to inflation for imported items. In the month of June 2024, we see a reversal of the trend in June 2023, as the dominance changed from inflation for imported items to inflation for locally produced items, as inflation for locally produced items recorded a 7.5 percentage point difference relative to inflation for imported items. Disaggregation is done across the 13 divisions, keeping in mind the headline inflation figure of 22.8% for the month of June 2024 and 2.9% monthly inflation rate for the month of June 2024. Across the 13 divisions, we identified 4 of the divisions that recorded rates of inflation higher than the overall national rate of inflation of 22.8%. This was led by alcoholic beverages, recording a rate of inflation of 32.3%, followed closely by restaurant and accommodation services, 30.7%, housing, water, electricity and gas and other fuels, 26.0%, and food and non-alcoholic beverages, 24.0%. All these 4 divisions recorded rates of inflation higher than the overall rate of inflation of 22.8%. In the case of monthly inflation, we identified only one of the divisions that recorded a rate of inflation higher than the overall monthly inflation of 2.9%. And this division was food and non-alcoholic beverages, with a weight of 42.7%, recording a rate of inflation of 5.1% for the month of June 2024. We look at the shares of these 13 divisions, and across these 13 divisions, we identified 3 of the 13 divisions that account for 2/3 of the overall rate of inflation, with food inflation 45.4%, followed by housing, water, electricity and gas 11%, and transport accounting for about 67% of the overall inflation that was recorded for the month of June 2024. The consistent decrease in the share of food inflation has been reversed, as the share of food inflation has increased from 41.5% to to 45.4% for the month of June 2024. The least contribution of health and insurance has been sustained for the month of June 2024. Focusing on food inflation and identifying the subclasses that drive year-on-year food inflation and month-on-month food inflation, consistent with previous releases, 5 subclasses drive year-on-year food inflation. These 5 subclasses are vegetables, ready-made food, cereals, fish and other seafood, and live animals, which command significant weight in excess of 3 points, contributing to the overall food inflation of 24.0% that was recorded in the month of June 2024. We continue to see the dominance of vegetables that recorded a rate of inflation of 43.2% for the month of June 2024. Another subclass that we see significantly contributing to food inflation is fruit and nuts that recorded the highest change in prices in the month of June 2024, with a change in price of about 45% for the month of June 2024. On a month-on-month basis, with a monthly food inflation of 5.1%, we again identify on a monthly basis fruits and nuts recording the highest rate of inflation of 12.6%, and again followed by vegetables on a monthly basis that recorded a price change of 9.6% for the month of June 2024. From a regional perspective across the 16 administrative regions, we see the Upper East region for the second time in a row recording the highest rate of inflation of 35.2%, and the OT region recording the least rate of inflation. For the first time in several months, from a food inflation perspective, we see the Bunu East region recording a rate of food inflation higher than the Eastern region, and consistent with releases in the immediate past, we see the Upper East region recording the highest rate of inflation for non-food inflation. Focusing on the region with the highest rate of inflation and the region with the highest rate of food inflation, in the Upper East region, which had a rate of inflation of 35.2%, the driving division for the Upper East region rate of inflation was alcoholic beverages that recorded a rate of inflation of 70.7%, which is about twice the overall regional inflation of 35.2% as was recorded for the month of June 2024. From the perspective of Bunu East region, which recorded the highest overall food inflation of 39.2%, vegetables was the dominant driver of food inflation in the Bunu East region, as vegetables in the Bunu East region recorded a price change of 72.5% for the month of June 2024. This was distantly followed by sugar confectionery that recorded a rate of 37.5% for the month of June 2024. Highlights for June 2024 rate of inflation. Year-on-year rate of inflation for the month of June 2024 stood at 22.8%, signaling that between June 2023 and June 2024, prices of goods and services went up by 22.8%. This rate of inflation indicates a slowdown in the rate of inflation by 0.3 percentage points on a month-on-month basis, as the rate of inflation for May 2024 stood at 23.1%. From a food inflation and a non-food inflation perspective, we see a reversal of the dominance of non-food inflation, as in the month of May 2024, non-food inflation recorded a 1.0 percentage point rate of inflation higher than food inflation. This dominance of non-food inflation has been reversed for the month of June 2024, as food inflation recorded a rate of 2.4 percentage points higher than non-food inflation, with food inflation 24.0% and non-food inflation 21.6%. We see a widening in the gap between inflation on locally produced items and inflation on imported items. With a variation of 7.5 percentage points, inflation for locally produced items stood at 25.0% for the month of June 2024, relative to 17.5% for inflation on imported items. From a regional perspective, we see that Upper East region recorded the highest rate of inflation of 35.2%, with the OT region recording a rate of inflation of 12.5%, indicating a 2.5 times difference between the region with the highest rate of inflation and the region with the lowest rate of inflation. On a month-on-month basis, we recorded an average price change of 2.9% between the months of May 2024 and June 2024, indicating that between May and June 2024, general price levels of goods and services went up by 2.9%. From the perspective of food and non-food inflation, we see a more than 5 times difference between inflation for food items and inflation for non-food items, with food items on a monthly basis 5.1% and non-food items 0.9%. The 5.1% that we've recorded monthly inflation for food is the highest that has been recorded in the last 13 months, and between May and June we've seen the steepest increase from 2.7% to 5.1% between May and June 2024. We focus on the item level and identify the items that recorded the highest price changes on a year-on-year basis and on a month-on-month basis. On a year-on-year basis, okra and green pepper recorded the highest price changes, respectively 87.8% and 71.0% on a year-on-year basis, that is between June 2023 and June 2024. Of the 20 items that recorded the highest price changes in the month of June 2024, only fresh tomatoes had significant weight, with a weight of 1.2% and a year-on-year change of 67.5% and a month-on-month change of 27.1%. Of the 20 items, we've identified 9 new entrants in the list of the top 20 items that recorded highest price changes on a year-on-year basis. This was led by oranges that recorded a change of 55.9%, garlic 50.0%, avocado 48.3%, and the least fish that is fried 38.9% for the month of June 2024. Keeping in mind the national overall rate of inflation of 22.8% for June 2024, we identified at the item level items that recorded price changes higher than the 22.8% that was recorded at the national level. Of this, we identify 85 out of the 307 items recording price changes higher than 22.8%, which was the overall rate of inflation for June 2024. This was dominated by local food that is local, with a share of 37 out of the 85 items, followed by non-food local that commanded 23.5% of the 85 items that recorded price changes higher than the national average of 22.8% for the month of June 2024. On a year-on-year basis across the 16 administrative regions, we identified the regions that recorded the highest price changes on a year-on-year basis and on a month-on-month basis. On a month-on-month basis, we continue to see strong volatilities across the 13-month period, but on a year-on-year basis, the Western North region recorded the highest decline of 44.5 percentage points, and the Greater Accra region recorded the least decline of 8.4 percentage points between June 2023 and June 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Samuel Kovneni, for this honor. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me take the opportunity to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Emmanuel Kovna, who is a Director, GSS, Mr. Timothy Afo, Director, GSS, and Mr. Francis Bramensa, Head of National Accounts. We also have in our midst our colleagues from the Bank of Ghana, and as you, the media men, we always will ask, you can see the strong collaboration that we have in. So there's a very strong team coming from the Central Bank who are here this morning. We're also having some officers from UNICEF. There's another program right after CPI. We will go into that. So now the floor is open for your questions, comments, and anything that you may have. You mention your name, your media house, and then you follow with your question, please. And sorry if I say media house, means I'm only limiting the questions to only the media men. No, anybody at all can ask. So just mention your institution and then you ask your question.
So by extension, you can also ask anybody any question?
No. Thank you. Yes, there's a microphone by you.
Thank you. My name is Moses from Bloomberg. What combination of factors would you say attributed to the drop that we are seeing? We see that non-food inflation is helping. Would you say a more stable currency contributed to a slowdown in non-food inflation? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? As usual, we want to take the first 3 sets of questions. Yes, yes, my brother. Please, can we pass on the microphone to him so that our colleagues online can hear? No, there are colleagues online who want to hear. Thank you.
Yes. Good morning, Prof. My name is Nana Poku. I write for the Daily Searchlight newspaper. Generally, we know that in Ghana, from May, June, July, we are in lean season. So are we surprised the food price is shooting up? Because generally there are some scarcity of some food items like plantain and other things.
Thank you. If there's any, can we have it before we go to Prof? Otherwise, we assume that today's presentation was so clear and straightforward. Echo. Officer Kasa,
Your Prof, thank you. My name is Echo, also from Bloomberg. I just want to tie into what my colleague inquired and asked. I checked the imported inflation and then local inflation, and I saw some variations. Would that also support the fair amount of stability we are seeing in the currency, and also how base effect might have affected this, given that the monthly rate still rose and yet there was a decline? Thank you.
Thank you, Echo. Thank you, colleagues. So we hand over to Prof to provide response to these questions. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much. Again, this is an opportunity for us to provide additional clarity in the use of these numbers. It is important we keep in mind that inflation rate is not indicating that prices of goods and services have gone down. As we rightly indicated, between June 2023 and June 2024, prices of goods and services have gone up by 22.8%. It is also important to emphasize the fact that between May and June 2024, prices of goods and services have gone up by 2.9%. What we're putting out there is a comparison between the rate that was recorded in May 2024 relative to the rate that is being presented for June 2024, which is indicating a slowdown but not a drop in the prices of goods and services. And this is where we need to keep an eye on the base calculations for these relative months. It will be recalled that between May and June 2024, we saw a significant increase in CPI from 178 to 184, indicating about 5.8 points between May 2023 and June 2024. The slowdown that we're recording for year-on-year inflation for June 2024 is to a very large extent as a result of what happened last year and should not be related to the fact that prices of goods and services in current period are going down. Clearly, from the month-on-month inflation, it tells you that both from a food inflation and a non-food inflation, prices of goods and services are going up. So we need to have that clarity with the interpretation. So the slowdown of 0.3 percentage point from both a year-on-year basis and a month-on-month basis is strictly as a result of the significant increases in consumer price index as we saw between May and June 2023. The question on the effect of exchange rate is always an important one, and that is why we've provided a trend analysis from June 2023 to June 2024. So the critical question for us to ask is, look at our trends in exchange rate variation over this same time period and see whether we can align the dominance of inflation on imported items in June 2023 to exchange rate depreciation, and also the reversal that we're recording now for June 2024 as a matter of exchange rate stability. So for that trend analysis, if you put the same trend on exchange rate on that, it will tell you whether it is exchange rate that is impacting on what we're seeing for imported items for June 2023 relative to June 2024.
Thank you, Prof. Let me also know that we have Mr. Osa from IMF joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, we have, yes, you want to follow up? Okay.
I took that more of as a comment. That is why I didn't, yes, I mean.
Because you said that it's not surprising, you know, it's expected that.
thinking is because normally May, June, July, food prices go high because of scarcity of some food items. I don't know whether it played a role in the coming down of the price of what do you call it, unimported food items of the country. I wanted to find out if what I'm.
Prof, he wants your opinion on his commentary.
And secondly,
yes,
it is assumed that, or research has shown that food prices in Ghana, for that matter, seems to be higher than West African sub-region. I don't know if that is true. And why is it that? Because people are really complaining of food prices going up almost on a daily basis.
Thank you. I thought I have the power to say, okay, I may have lots of questions, but I'll leave it to the conversation to respond. Do you have any other questions to ask? Otherwise, we respond to these and then we draw curtains on the CPI release and hand over to our colleagues from the mixed unit. Any other? Okay, so Prof, I think this is the last question we have on CPI. Thank you.
Once again, thank you very much. It is always important to look at the basket of food items if we want to draw conclusions on the effect of seasonality. As was indicated, we have 15 subclasses within the food basket. And out of these 15 subclasses, there are 5 of them with significant weight that drives food inflation, of which we have cereals as one of them, of which we have ready food as one of them. We have fish also and live animals as the other 2. The only subclass that in this case you may want to relate it to seasonality are the items that fall under vegetables and tubers, because with the others that I talked about, that generality in terms of seasonality on crops do not influence them. So it will be important to go back and look at these different categorizations of the subclasses and identify the ones that would have effect of seasonality. But generally, it is right. Around this time, we see that prices of specific food items, but not all food items, we see that is going up. So if you want to relate that to what we are seeing in June 2024, as I indicated, out of the 5 subclasses, it was vegetables and tubers that recorded the highest price change of the 5 subclasses. I'm hesitant to comment on the comparison between food prices in Ghana and that of other African countries, because that analysis has not been done by the service.
Thank you, Prof. Let me be magnanimous enough. Echo.
Follow-up.
The second mic, can we pass it? And please, this will be the last one because, like I said, there's another program that Prof has to chair and then.
Yeah, Prof, thank you. Just a follow-up. It's 2 in 1. I want to ask a direct question. Which regions or region, in your estimation, would you categorize as Ghana's food basket? And also, that is the premise on which my second question comes up. I envisage that the northern belt somewhat, like maybe north of Kumasi through Tamale and the rest, constitute what could be our food basket. However, in all those regions, the food inflation was higher than the national average. And I know we had done some work on that, where we were trying to decipher or interpret why these things were happening. And we came across a lot of factors: transportation, how the distribution, and what have you. I don't know how far that data has been implemented by the Agric Ministry, or how do you see that there have been any measures to actualize all that research that came out to help us and answer some of these questions, that the food baskets also end up having really high food inflation, even when we are entering or even almost in the season of harvest? Can you help me understand what has happened to that work that we did?
Prof, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Again, our caution in we treating food inflation as one homogeneous basket with the same item, especially when you want to think about it from a regional perspective. As we've put out there for the month of June 2024, Bunu East recorded the highest food inflation. The commodities that are available in that region would attest to the fact that will be different from the commodities that are available in the Upper East, Upper West, and Northern and Savannah and therefore Northeast region. So it's important this conversation is held at the item level so that if we take a particular item, we see the changes in prices and then ask the question whether that item is available in that particular region and therefore what is the effect of issues like transportation, storage, post-harvest losses and things like that. That's some analysis that again we are hoping that in collaboration with the ministry we will be able to do.
Thank you, Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, let me inform you that through the initiative of the government association, we now do publish the average prices of items in the CPI basket on our website. So if you visit the Stars Bank at the Ghana Statistical Service website, you will have average prices of commodities of interest to you, and you can do your further analysis. Thank you, and at this juncture, with your permission, Professor Samuel Kobnenim, I hand over to the mixed team for the second session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for the opportunity. Colleagues from the media.
You can leave. If you want to leave, yeah. No, I want the mixed guys to sit around the table.
The deputy rep, he's on his way coming. He said he was giving 11, so he's here. So, but let me call him. But I told him to wait.
Okay. No, I have this. Yes. But I'm told the deputy rep is not in.
To organize ourselves for the second activity. Thank you very much for your patience and apologies for not starting on time. We are privileged this morning to have, once again, the government statistician and the OIC of UNICEF Ghana to officially sign an agreement between Ghana Statistical Service and UNICEF for the 2025 mixed survey. So ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, let me please welcome the government statistician to give us a remarks. Then we'll move on to the rep from UNICEF. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Francis Ripi. Colleagues, good morning. We welcome you all to this morning's engagement between the Ghana Statistical Service and UNICEF. As was indicated by Dr. Francis Ripi, this is an engagement that offers us the opportunity to implement the mandate of the Ghana Statistical Service. As you are all aware, the Ghana Statistical Service is mandated to collect data, analyze, disseminate, and help inform evidence-based decision-making. Over the period, the work of the service, as we just witnessed this morning, has been restricted mainly to economic variables, but this is one of the activities that enables us to comprehensively undertake the functions of the service. Specifically, Clause 4 of the Statistical Service Act 1003 that was assented in 2019 gives us a broad sense of our engagement, which encompasses issues beyond economic variables. Specifically, it touches on issues that affect our social engagement, it touches on issues that affect the demography of the country, and more importantly, emphasizes the need for us to look at different living conditions for different categories of people, especially the children. The Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey is one of the exercises that focuses on child health, child education, child protection, and also maternal health. In 1995, Ghana Statistical Service started this engagement with UNICEF, and this MOU that we're going to sign today would give us an opportunity to have the 5th round of the Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey. One of the uniqueness of this survey relative to the previous surveys, as I indicated, that touches on protection, child health, child education, maternal health, are two things that we want to highlight because we think they are very germane to our living conditions as a country. One has to do with water quality tests. We all would attest to the fact that with all these illegal mining happening, small-scale mining, otherwise termed as galamsey, we know the implications on our water bodies. This multiple indicator cluster survey would give us an opportunity to do a water quality test and look at how the sites of these illegal mining or small-scale mining is influencing the health of children and mothers. Another unique dimension of the 5th round of the multiple indicator cluster survey is issues around mental health. We are approaching health broadly, but specifically looking at mental health from different perspectives, and especially how it affects foundational learning of children and also how it affects mothers at a certain age in their careers are things that we've not looked at, but all of you would agree that these are indicators that helps us to think through our ability to contribute to economic development, our ability to live a sound life, and so on. So we're hoping that beyond this signing of MOU, we're going to get all of your engagement, publicize this undertaking, which this signing of the MOU will be the first milestone, and going into 2025, we're going to start the data collection and the analysis of the data. So we look forward to walking you through this journey to ensure that we have the relevant data that will not only inform the SDGs. This exercise is going to give us over 260 indicators, of which 33 of them are coming from the SDGs. We're going to focus on the long-term development plan, the 2057 development plan, look at the social development indicators in there, and use this as one of the surveys to track our efforts in achieving the statistical targets that we have in our long-term and sectorial policies. So thank you very much for coming, and I'll pass the mic on to my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Government Statistician Professor Samuel Kobina Anin, all the management of the GSS here today, friends from the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everybody. As has been outlined perfectly, we're here to formalize the collaboration between the Ghana Statistical Service and UNICEF on the 5th round of the Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey, or MIX as we know it. Signing of this memorandum between the two parties marks the start of our combined efforts for the planning and execution of the survey, including our efforts to engage all involved stakeholders to begin to take the necessary actions on their sides to enable the MIX to proceed. We are living in an era of polycrises where our children and families are under the threat of pandemics, conflict, inflation, food insecurity, climate and energy crises. And though these issues affect the population at large, they disproportionately impact the most vulnerable, including children, exacerbating both monetary and multidimensional poverty, as just 2 points. At the same time, we find ourselves at a critical juncture with only 5 years remaining until our collective deadline to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. It's therefore tremendously important to design more strategic, targeted interventions to meet the challenges and to reach those left behind. And to do that, we need quality and timely data on various aspects of the quality of life, data that enables a closer look at the situation of children and families in Ghana, and data that helps advance quality, evidence-based decisions critical to address those challenges, and the MIX will help in this regard. Launched in the mid-1990s, the MIX is the world's largest source of internationally comparable, free and open data sources on children and their households. It provides data on an increasingly wide variety of topics across sectors, serving as a critical evidence base for interventions aimed at poverty reduction and child welfare. The 5th round of MIX will provide Ghana with data on 267 indicators relevant to children, adolescents, youth and their families, including 33 SDG indicators. This will enable a comprehensive overview of the situation of children in Ghana by complementing other data collection and reporting mechanisms. Since 1995, the Ghana Statistical Service and UNICEF have jointly conducted 4 cycles of the mix. The data from these previous cycles have informed several critical analyses, such as the Ghana's multi-dimensional child poverty analysis, secondary analyses across education, health and nutrition and child protection sectors, several sectoral strategies, and of course the medium-term national development policy framework. Having completed these cycles together, the GSS and UNICEF teams in Ghana are equipped with expert knowledge and experience to ensure seamless survey execution. With this MoU, we trust that our experience will continue to be collaborative and involve a wide range of partners across government, the diplomatic corps, the United Nations, civil society, academia, and local communities. Indeed, UNICEF calls for the broad participation from the government of Ghana and contributions from development partners who have already demonstrated valuable commitments to mix across the world. After signing the MoU today, a steering committee and technical committees will be established to carry out the next steps, including to raise the awareness and participation of civil society. We all have a role in this to play. With over 6 years passed now since the last mix was completed in 2018, it is now timely for the GSS and UNICEF to sign this MoU today and start preparing for the next cycle in 2025. Let's all work together to complete this important survey and contribute to a better Ghana for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. So we'll move straight to the signing of the MoU. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please put our hands together for UNICEF and Ghana Statistical Service. We'll go ahead to exchange the MoUs. Thank you very much. Once again, let's put our hands together for them, please. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Mr. Makasi. So please, what we are going to do now is that the floor is now open for questions. If you have anything to ask, please you mention your name in the media house. Then the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Akol. I report for Bloomberg. This MoU that you signed, although I would have loved to witness it, is there a witness column I could also sign? Okay, that's a question. What does it seem to do? I heard you say a lot of mix and what have you. So is it financial support to embark on this data collection? Because it's exciting when I heard about water quality. It will surprise you that our government deserves to be jailed for anything or like scrutinized, because what we've done to water in this country is horrible. So I'm very excited that something like that is happening. But is it more like funding, or what sort of support are you? What's in this MoU that you're signing? Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Good morning once again. My name is Nanapoku from Daily Searchlight. What are the specifics? I mean, specific areas that we are going to assist, and can you give us a figure or the monetary consideration involved in the whole deal, if there is any?
Please, we take the last question, then respond to your questions.
How long will it take to start? I had 2025, does it start in 25? Maybe the timelines will help us from when you start till maybe when you publish the reports, and then maybe we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Okay, so I think these are very important questions. The MOU that we've signed today spans two broad areas. One has to do with the preparedness operational side of things, and the other has to do with the technical side of things in terms of the data collection itself. So what I mean by preparedness operational sides of things includes issues of what should be the scope of the issues that we want to investigate. We've broadly given you some indicators. As was rightly indicated, we're going to set up a steering committee, set up a technical committee, and then finally agree on the scope of issues that would go into that. That would have implications on the budget that we will need to undertake this exercise. Jointly, once we've agreed on the scope and agreed on the tentative or indicative budget, then we have a resource mobilization strategies. Both institutions have been thinking about this for some time now. We have a sense of what our limits are, but as to whether they would match the scope of the work is something that this MOU would allow us to do. So that covers the preparedness, the operational side of things. Then the technical side of things will be the actual data collection in terms of how do you ensure good publicity, how do you ensure quality data, how do you ensure the timeliness and things like that. And that is what the technical advisory committee will do. So once we've signed this MOU, then we're going to get into that action on both sides of the exercise. The other thing that I heard you ask has to do with the timelines. Now we're looking forward to ensuring that we do all the preparatory work, as I've indicated, between now and end of the calendar year, that is 2024. In the first quarter of the year, consistent with our approach in collecting quality data, we start with listing the identified enumeration areas that we're going to collect the data, and then hopefully in the third quarter of 2025, the main data collection would happen. With our track record to ensuring that we analyze data alongside the inflow of the data, we hope that at the latest, by the end of the first quarter of 2026, we would have finished with the dissemination of this exercise. I did, but...
oh, okay. Because I was asking for how much is involved and the specifics. I mean, for the specifics, I've spoken about them. So I wanted to hear the figure involved because I didn't hear, honestly.
So as I indicated, as at now, we are not able to give you any figure. The figure will be dependent on the scope of the work. So as we've said, water quality is of interest to us. Mental health is of interest to us. Once we set up the technical committee and the steering committee, thank you, they might say that, please, this is so important that we would want you to cover a lot more areas, which would have additional cost implications. So until the steering committee meets to really decide on the scope, we are unable to put any figure out there now.
Thank you, Prof. Please, any other question?
Want to add something?
So in the absence of any question, we will take the closing remarks from Prof. Then we'll bring the curtains to this important engagement. So, Prof.
Once again, thank you very much, Dr. CP. Colleagues, we are so excited that the first milestone has been undertaken for the 2025 Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey. As it has been indicated, this is a journey that is going to span close to a 2-year period. It's not just after the dissemination, but the engagement with the dissemination. We hope we can carry you along over this 2-year period to ensure that we impact the lives of children, adults, and mothers in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you.